Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, presented by Brandis Snowden for Counseling 5283 Advanced Counseling Skills. Albert Ellis, born September 27, 1913, was an American psychologist who is considered the father of Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, also known as REBT. He is generally considered to be one of the originators of the cognitive revolutionary paradigm shift in psychotherapy, and an early proponent of and developer of cognitive behavioral strategies. Albert Ellis's family life. Ellis was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and raised in the Bronx borough of New York. He was the eldest of 3 children. Ellis's father was often away from home on business trips, and when he was home, Ellis claimed that he was not an affectionate man towards his children. By his teenage years, his parents had divorced, and he lived solely with his mother. Ellis described his mother as self-absorbed and mentally unstable. She was an individual that suffered from both severe depression and bipolar disorder. And like his father, Ellis's mother was emotionally distanced from her children. This left Ellis with the responsibility of caring for his siblings. Ellis was a sickly child throughout most of his life, an issue that followed him into adulthood. His numerous health problems ended up causing him to have 8 hospitalizations between the ages of 5 and 7, one of which lasted nearly a year. His parents provided little emotional support during these years and very rarely visiting him or consoling him while he was hospitalized. Despite his home life, Ellis claims that he doesn't feel resentment for his upbringing, and this early resilience is often reflected in his psychological philosophies. One anecdotal incident with Ellis is that he was extremely shy around women. And a story goes that at the age of 19, he was already showing signs of being a cognitive-based therapist. He forced himself to talk to 100 women in the Bronx Botanical Gardens over the period of 1 month. Now, even though he jokes that he did not get a date, he does report that he was able to desensitize himself to his fear of rejection by women. This exposure therapy later became a technique that he often used with clients. Ellis held a master's and PhD in clinical psychology from Columbia University. He was certified by the American Board of Professional Psychology, and he also founded and was the president of the New York-based Albert Ellis Institute. In 1942, Ellis began his studies for his PhD in clinical psychology at Columbia University. And this program mostly trained psychologists in psychoanalysis. He completed his master's first in June of 1943, and at the time started a private practice while still working towards his PhD. This was possible because there was no licensing board in New York at the time. Ellis began publishing articles about psychoanalysis even before he received his degree. In 1947, he was awarded a PhD in clinical psychology at Columbia, and at that time, Ellis had started to believe that psychoanalysis was the deepest and most effective form of therapy. Like many psychologists of the time, he was interested in the theories of Sigmund Freud. He sought additional training in psychoanalysis and then began to practice classical psychoanalysis. However, during his practice, he found that many of his patients did not feel that psychoanalysis solved the problems for which they sought help for. Ellis discovered that too much emphasis was being placed on past events and things that clients could no longer control or change. Ellis's faith in psychoanalysis was gradually crumbling. During this time, he started to develop his own theories for psychoanalysis, and he was influenced by numerous contemporaries. For example, Karen Horney, whose institute that he worked at briefly, is considered the founder of feminist psychology. Ellis read Alfred Adler, who pushed the theory of inferiority versus superiority. Erich Fromm was another one that he often corresponded with and studied. Erich Fromm is considered the leader in humanistic psychology. And lastly, Eric Sullivan is one of the founders of the idea of social psychology, which believed that the environment in which a client was in often had a bearing on how they reacted to their environment. Now, Ellis took these numerous points of view and distilled them into his working theory that addresses how to change the cognitive process of patients. Rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, is based on the idea that it is not the things that happen to us that cause our problems. It is our thoughts and thinking patterns that lead to the cognitive, emotional, and behavior issues that challenge us. Ellis distilled his idea down into a simple framework called the ABC framework. A is the activating event or adversity. B is the belief about the event, ourselves or the world in general. And C is the consequence of our emotion and behaviors when addressing the activating event. Now, Ellis believed that far too much emphasis had been placed on activating events, and most of the consequences were actually determined by our beliefs, the B of the ABC framework. This is a major shift in the prevailing psychoanalysis of the day, and it gave new hope to clients who were frustrated by their lack of results from traditional therapy. After all, if our beliefs are the real culprit rather than the events, then we have more control over the consequences than we thought. Ellis believed that there were two categories to cognition. He referred to these as hot and cold. Cold cognition refers to the way we initially think about and understand what happens to us, our gut reaction, so to speak, while hot cognition evaluates our cold cognition. We don't have much control over our cold cognitions, as these were formed early on in our lives and are generally not consciously understood. These are our subconscious reactions. However, we can influence how we evaluate those cold cognitions. RBT distinguishes between healthy negative emotions and unhealthy negative emotions. Healthy negative emotions follow from adverse events that we approach with rational beliefs and adaptive behaviors. It is all right to be angry. However, how you react to that anger is the main issue. While unhealthy negative emotions stem from irrational beliefs and maladaptive behaviors. REBT aims to help clients reduce these irrational beliefs and replace them with rational ones. Now, grounded in these innovative ideas, REBT was designed as a practical approach to help people learn techniques that would allow them to overcome their obstacles and cope with life's challenges more effectively. Therapy techniques for REBT are divided by where they fall in the ABC framework. This leaves us with three main types of techniques: problem solving, cognitive restructuring, and coping. Problem solving techniques are intended to help clients address the activating event, the A in the ABC model. By addressing the activating event or adversity head-on, popular problem-solving methods include practicing problem-solving skills, learning assertiveness techniques and putting them into practice, learning and practicing social skills that may be lacking, learning decision-making skills and applying them, and practicing conflict resolution. Oftentimes, a client has little or no control over the activating event, or the event is firmly placed in cold cognition. When that is the case, Ellis focuses on the beliefs and behaviors that arise from the event by working towards cognitive restructuring. This is meant to change the client's cognitive process, how they think. And we do this by evaluating and disrupting thought processes and behaviors that are maladaptive. Some techniques that are used in this part of the ABC framework, the B part of the framework, are logical or rationalization techniques, which help to show a client that their original thought process just wasn't logical. And it trains them towards a more logical and rational thinking process. Guided imagery and visualization. This technique allows clients to explore worst-case scenarios to help alleviate anxiety and to downgrade the catastrophic thought process of a client. Reframing. Reframing allows a client to see the activating event and the consequences from a different perspective. This change in perspective can often change how a client feels emotionally about the event. Using humor and irony. This allows a client to approach their cognitive processes with less negativity. Exposing yourself to what you fear. Ellis believed that people can become desensitized to their fears if they face them regularly. And lastly, disputing irrational beliefs. By directly confronting irrational beliefs, the client can interrupt the maladaptive behavior and make a change. There are times when a client can't change the activating event and continues to struggle despite using techniques to change their cognitive response. When this occurs, Ellis suggests various coping mechanisms that help to reduce the impact of A and B on the C, the consequence, and also helps to alleviate the emotional stress that comes with the event. These techniques include relaxation, actively seeking activities that reduce their stress response. Ellis also suggested hypnosis. However, this coping mechanism is questionable in its effectiveness in modern psychoanalysis. Meditation. This is another practice that is meant to reduce the stress response and shut down the negative thinking going on in a client's mind. Mindfulness, reminding the client not to dwell on the past or future events, but to deal with the here and now. It encourages clients to truthfully examine the positives in their life and not just dwell on the negatives. Breathing exercises. This grounding technique can help with all of the other techniques. To see these techniques in action, I have the following video that was created by the counseling department of the University of Texas at Austin. We will observe the clips of just the counseling session role play. If you're interested in the entire video, it can be found at www.youtube.com/watch?V=V9EZZIKXR74.
So, Elaine, what brought you in today?
Well, I've been having these really terrible fights with my sister. Our dad's recently had major surgery, so we've been seeing a lot of each other. But every time we're in the same room, we just have this terrible fight. And every time I'll go up and she'll go up, and it's just, I don't know what to do about it. It's upsetting.
So it sounds like there's a lot of anger between your sisters.
Yes.
Okay, well, why don't we try to get to the source of that anger? See, what we think in REBT is that there's typically an activating event. In this case, it's being around your sister, having these interactions with her, that's causing this anger that you feel. But what we believe in REBT is that there's actually a middle ground, an area of these irrational beliefs that are actually causing the emotion that you feel. So for you, what is it you think is bringing about this anger?
Just being in the same room with my sister.
Okay. If you're in the same room, what happens?
She will immediately criticize me, and I'll just get angry.
Okay. And if she criticizes you, what does that mean?
That means she thinks I'm stupid.
And if she thinks you're stupid, then what?
Well, she's a lawyer, so she has a way of getting everyone on her side. So if she thinks I'm stupid, then everyone's going to be on her side.
Okay, and if everyone's on her side and thinks you're stupid, what do you think then? Okay. And if they don't like you, what does that mean?
Nobody, unlikable people they don't have friends. They don't, I would never want to be that type of person. I feel worthless.
Okay. So basically, it sounds like you're taking this idea of this criticism by your sister and generalizing it to the fact that it causes all this anger for you. So that criticism is your activating event. The anger is this consequence that you feel. But it sounds like there's not a middle ground there, these irrational beliefs that I referred to before. So basically for you, if people don't like you, all of a sudden you think you're this horrible person. And maybe it's this irrational belief of thinking you're a horrible person is actually causing that rage and anger for you. As you can see, maybe it's these irrational beliefs as opposed to the sister's criticism.
Yeah. But when I'm around my sister, I do feel like horrible, like I'm a horrible person, but I don't really believe that about myself.
The technique, do you mind trying a little imagery maybe to uncover some additional irrational beliefs, maybe a little role play, pretending your sister's in the room?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so what I want you to do is just close your eyes. I want you to pretend your sister is here, and I want you to think, what would she be saying to you right now? Elaine, we don't need your help with Dad. We can handle it on our own, especially since you always just add more stress to the situation.
How could you say that? He's my dad too. I love him just as much as you do, and just because I don't have as much money as you do doesn't mean that I can't be useful here.
Well, how about you get a steady job? And then you could send help from time to time, and you could live more comfortably. And when you come to visit us, you wouldn't be burdening us with rides all the time. There wouldn't be so much stress, and it would just be better for everyone.
Listen, I support my own family. You should just say that. I support my own family. I do what I can. Why do you have to say such hateful things? You're such a monster.
Okay, Elaine, let me interrupt you for a moment. Do you see how your feelings of rage and frustration here are making you jump all the way to the conclusion that your sister is an absolute monster?
But she is. I'm trying my best to be a good wife, a good mother, a good daughter, and even in this situation, she's criticizing me. She makes me feel worthless.
Okay, well, don't forget that just because she criticizes you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're worthless. But here I want to focus on the irrational belief about your sister. Basically, you're saying that all of these feelings of anger that you have based on her criticizing and all the things that she's saying mean that she's an absolutely horrible, awful person.
But she's really terrible. How could she say those things about me? She's just brought me to the core.
Do you really think that she's supposed to be perfect? I mean, have there been times that you've said things that maybe weren't the nicest? Okay, does that mean that you're necessarily an awful person or a bad person because of those things you said? So what you want to think about is that sometimes people say bad things or do bad things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person overall.
Yeah, I
are not actually caused by the angry emails, but instead by this belief that sisters should, under all circumstances, no matter what, get along with each other.
Right, but I don't see how that's really irrational because that's what makes sisters should be close.
All right, let's talk about that. What kind of relationships do you have with other family members?
Well, I get along okay with my brothers and with my parents.
So you admit that it could be much worse and more pervasive throughout the family. You could have problems with all of your family members.
True, but I don't.
But do you see how maybe we just created that irrational belief then?
Yeah, so just because I don't get along well with my sister doesn't mean that I can't find meaning from my other family relationships. And then disagreeing with one family member doesn't mean that it has to be that way.
Big glory.
Hey, I find it interesting to see the shift from classical psychoanalysis to a more cognitive based approach as it has become the foundation of modern therapy practices. I agree with Ellis that we cannot change the past and that we must focus on how we think and react to the events rather than the event itself. I have always been drawn to cognitive based approaches because it lines up with my own personality. My own thought process for maladaptive thoughts and behaviors is that if I don't like something, figure out what the real issue is and make a plan to change it, and then follow through with that plan. Sometimes it's a slow process. Sometimes the changes aren't noticed for a very long time. But by working towards those changes, I feel like I have more control in my own life. It's easy to get stuck in a cycle of going with the flow and having the belief that you can't change anything in your life in any way. Hey, I am that individual that tries to find solutions or at least ways to cope because sometimes there is no solution. You just have to make the best of a bad situation. And so I'm drawn to Ellis and his techniques for REBT, as well as Beck and his cognitive behavioral therapy. The reality to me is that cognitive techniques are here to stay, especially as long as third-party insurance agencies get to dictate the types of therapy and duration of therapy. Because unlike many other forms of therapy, cognitive-based therapies are meant to be solution-based and temporary. Thank you for watching today's presentation.